Today, we'll talk about the worst Pokemons. But this is not my opinion. This is based off the base stat. So, this is based off the base stat total. Not every Pokemon with a low base stat total is bad. But we'll be factoring in many things. The movesets, and the typings, and the overall usefulness in all the games. For example, the Pokemon with not really high base stat totals, around 400 450, that are very useful because of their abilities, or even Pokemon that even have a lower base stat total such as Mawile and Sableye. For example, Sableye had no weakness for a couple of generations, and Mario got Mega Evolution and Fairy typing that made it absolutely broken. So not every Pokemon with a low base stat total is completely and utterly helpless. So the first generation we'll be talking about is the first generation, and the first worst ones is Butterfree. So Beetle got Mega Evolution rated down the line, which made it at least a bit more useful, but Butterfree got left behind. And in most of the generations, both of these Pokemon are very useless. They evolve relatively quickly, yes, but they have a both space stat totals in 395. Butterfree's movesets are not really that great, and Butterfree's sort of been a psychic type for all amount of psychic type moves at once. And Beedrill is just not that is just a terrible Pokemon overall, despite having a decent Pokemon design. Both of these Pokemon are absolutely not yet useful. Same thing with Raticate. Raticate does get guts rated down the line, so it can be useful for that. But who would want to use this on their team over Snorlax or other better normal types? There's no point using Raticate. Same thing with the Alolan Raticate, unless you want to use it in Let's Go, which there was no Dark types in Let's Go. The next worst Pokemon is Parasect. Parasect is probably the worst Pokemon besides Butterfree and Beedrill of all Pokemon. Parasect has a base stat total of 4 or 5. It has a not very great moveset, and everybody knows this Pokemon is very useless. It also has moves like Spore and stuff, but you also get in later generations it gets replaced by Pokemon like Breloom and Amoonguss, which are far better than this Pokemon. Next Pokemon on the list is Farfetch'd. So Farfetch'd is definitely far better in the Galar region, but for 7 reasons, this Pokemon is borderline useless. I know it's supposed to be an endangered Pokemon or something like that, but maybe because of how useless this Pokemon is, people thought, hey, this Pokemon is so useless, let's just eat it instead. And yeah, that's probably the reason why Galar has actually Farfetch'd that are actually useful and can evolve into Surfetch'd instead. But Farfetch'd is useless. It has one of the lowest base stat totals of all time, and is completely not a useful Pokemon to use. The next Pokemon, for example, Ditto may seem useless, but Ditto has move Transform, and its whole gimmick transforms to another Pokemon. But Ditto really depends on what Pokemon it transforms to. It can transform into Arceus, Arceus, or it can transform into Magikarp. So Ditto just varies about how useful the Pokemon is transforming into. So Ditto is not that most useless Pokemon. But there's also Mew that also wants to transform, and Zora and Zoroark, which also have ability that's similar. And there are also Pokemon later on that can also change the forms into other Pokemon as well. But Ditto is still not as useless as other Pokemon. Then we have Gen 2. Gen 2 is a generation of useless and bad Pokemon. The first Pokemon is Ariados and Radiant. Ferret at least has some uses, but these two bugs are just useless. Radiant is probably one of the worst Pokemon in the entire region. Actually, they're far worse than Radiant. Ariados is another useless bug type, despite being bug poison. Then, why would you use these two bugs over Scizor? I don't have to trade Scizor over, but even Cypher is better than these two bugs in Gen 2. If you look at Cypher's stat total, and also you can just use Pinsir instead, and Heracross. Both Heracross was introduced in Gen 2E anyways. But even then, Cypher is still much better than these Pokemon here. With Cypher and Scizor basically have the same space stat total, though, making it by Cypher basically has the same base stat total as Scizor, making Cypher better than these two bugs anyways. The next Pokemon on the list is, I suppose it was another example of those types of Pokemon. Next is Unknown. Unknown is practically the worst Pokemon ever made. Unknown ones one move. Yep, one move. And that's Hidden Power. There was really absolutely nothing used for Unknown. Unknown just completely and utterly sucks in every board. The next Pokemon is Wobbuffet. Wobbuffet might be useful in some situations, but Wobbuffet is a Pokemon that you wouldn't really use on the team. Wobbuffet is basically a Pokemon that soaks up hits and can take them and can send them back. That's why Wobbuffet has such a high HP stat. But who uses Wobbuffet on the game playthrough unless they are just absolutely insane? Or just love Wobbuffet so much? Wobbuffet was funny in the Pokemon anime, but it doesn't save it from being on this list. Next we have Dunsparce, another Pokemon known for being pretty much useless. It is a normal type Pokemon, even though this Pokemon is said to be ground type. Why isn't Dunsparce not ground type? Nobody knows why. I think Ground Dragon would have been a better typing for this Pokemon. Fine. But Dunsparce is a Pokemon that is in desperate need of evolution, and for surprisingly, it never got one. Unlike other single-stage evolutions like Glowfist, which have far better base stat totals, Dunsparce is just completely useless compared to most of the others. The next Pokemon on the list is Delibird. Delibird is another Pokemon that only runs one move, Present. This move is useless, as it has 20% of chance of healing the opponent's health. I do like the fact that it's a Santa-based bird, but who would use this thing in battle? That's the real thing. Who would use it in battle? Now we have Gen 3 to go about. So Gen 3 introduced a lot of useless Pokemon. First is the pair of Beautifly and Dustox, two more useless bug-type Pokemon. It just seems in every generation is always a pair of useless bug-type Pokemon. These Pokemon have no uses, and there are better bug-type Pokemon further down in the region as well. You have Dinzask, which is far better in every way, and of course, it's the previously mentioned Heracross and Pinsir you can transfer from previous games, and Cypher is going to evolve into Scizor. Why would he use these things in any region over these three is absolutely stupid and dumb. Especially after Gen 5 where they introduced so many amazing bug types. Yeah, these things are just not very useful at all. The next useless Pokemon is Sedenza. But wait, Sedenza has Wonder Guard. But then you realize that Sedenza only has 1 health. It would be different if Sedenza at least had like similar HP stats to like Diglett or some other Pokemon. But the fact that this thing only has 1 health, it makes it completely useless. Especially later down when you actually are fighting against actual people who are actually smart and not dumb like AI. And also this thing is completely useless against the Fire Gym and several other gyms that completely counter this thing easily. Next is Delcatty. Delcatty is not really useful. Delcatty is a cat Pokemon, but it's not really that useful. Delcatty has a poor base stat total of 400. That's 400. And that's it. That's all Delcatty gets. Delcatty is not really known for being an amazing normal type, especially considering that Slacking exists in the same generation. And yeah, some people say, but Slacking is also pretty bad. But Slacking still has a base stat total of 470D. It does have a bad ability, but its ability is meant to keep it in check. And it also can get explored in the same generation too, which is far better than Delcatty anyways. And then we have the aforementioned Sableye and Mawile. Mawile used to be useless until Gen 6. And Sableye, of course, was always had its playing stability in later generations, and also had a Mega Evolution. So these Pokemon are not exactly useless at all. The next Pokemon is Pursuit and Mine and Volbeat and Luminaise. These Pokemon were introduced for the gimmick of the double battles. But who uses Volbeat and Luminaise? They always have better base stats than the two bugs earlier in the game, but Pursuit and Mine are two-bit useless electric types. You can get Pikachu in the same generation, you can get Manectric in the same generation as well. Both Pikachu and Manectric are far better than these two Pursuit and Mine. You can also get Eevee as well, which can evolve into a Jolteon as well. Well, it can even transfer earlier electric types in the game and earlier generations as well, such as Lantern, which is far better than Pursuit and Mine anyways. Volbeat and Luminaise are also outclassed by the earlier Redmans and Ninjask, and Scizor as well, and other bug types in other generations. They can transfer over as well. Next is Spinder. Spinder is probably one of the worst dual types of all time. Even worse than Dunsparce, it has a stat of 360, which is completely useless. Spinder is just not really good at all. And then next we have little old Castform. Castform has a base stat total of 420. Oh, you might think Castform is useful. Castform can transform into any other Pokemon based off a letter. But then you have Castform's moveset. It is not good. And they buffed Castform's moveset in later generations. But Castform used to have an abysmal base stat total far lower than it used to be. Castform's entire moveset consists of just weather type moves. It changes the Pokemon's typing. It has very few coverage moves because you have to try to, and you would think this Pokemon have been useful in the Weather Wars, but it's still useless in even that meta. Even in the competitive sense. So Castform sort of had a buff a long time ago, so a stat total of at least 450 to 460, or sort of received an evolution. So no excuse, Castform, no excuse. Next is Luvdisc. Luvdisc has one of the lowest base stat totals of all time. Why does this not evolve into a world more? It's just surprising to say at least. I know they didn't want to make it evolve more because they Gen 5 Pokemon. They wanted Gen 5 Pokemon to be unique. And they still made it where it just still evolved into a more regard at all. And, Luvdisc is just completely useless. It's just completely useless. Luvdisc has this garbage movesets in every game. Why would you use Luvdisc over all the other water types in the game? Walrein, Hunter, Gorbis, Rollicamp, all exist in the same generation. You also have a starter that's far better than Luvdisc, which is Swampert. Swampert's better than Luvdisc in every way. Next we have Gen 4. What are the worst Pokemon in Gen 4? Well, it's not Vespiquen per se. The first worst one is Kricketune. Bibarel is not useless because it can be a good HM slave, which is pretty good. But Kricketune is just garbage. Terrible moveset and it's just another bad bug type, especially at the Platinum Dex. But even then, it's outclassed by Vespiquen, which is far better than it in every way. It's also outclassed in more to introduce bug types in Platinum Dex, including Mega, including Scizor. Those two Pokemon were introduced in the Platinum Dex, which are far better than Kricketune anyways. And next is Wormadam. What the hell is Wormadam? Well, I'll tell you what Wormadam is. Useless, and Burmy is useless. Why was Burmy introduced? To introduce some useless gimmick that nobody gives a crap about? There was nothing good about Wormadam anyways. It is completely garbage in every Pokemon series game. So Wormadam's completely useless. Pachirisu is another useless Pokemon. It started a long line of useless Pikachu clones that nobody wanted. Pachirisu is just another electric type Pokemon. Considering that we got Luxray in the same generation, why would he use Pachirisu? Okay, why would he use this rodent over Luxray? Which is much better. They also get Pikachu in the same generation anyways, because why not? And then after that, we don't really have any useless Pokemon until we get to Tedot. The Staraptor is better than Tedot. It does have that unique gimmick though, and it also is pretty good in Mystery Dungeon as a character. But Staraptor is still better, regardless. Yes. And that's it for the useless Gen 4 Pokemon. Yep, there's only a few, because most of the good Gen 4 Pokemon are actually evolved Pokemon. Then we had Gen 5. Gen 5 has a couple of useless Pokemon. First is Warthog. Warthog is also still a pretty good space stat tool, but they stopped making very, very useless Pokemon. Warthog gets outclassed by Stoutland in every way. It is also a normal type, and other normal types rated in that game. So, yeah. At least has setup moves as well, and Hypnosis and Confuse Ray, which are two very annoying moves they get on your opponents. So it's not as useless as most of the other Pokemon way earlier in the generation. Next Pokemon in this generation that is completely useless is... Yeah, even the completely forgettable Maractus is not that useless either. There wasn't really many. Even Emolga isn't that useless, as it has a fire type, which makes it immune to it. But Emolga is still outclassed by some Striker as you get earlier in the game, and the Rexross literally has zero weakness at all. Yeah, Gen 5 has no very useless Pokemon. The worst Pokemon in the game are still pretty good. So congrats Gen 5 for not having any useless Pokemon. Then Gen 6 rolled around. Gen 6, of course, introduced Vivillon. Yep, but back to the useless bug-type Pokemon that nobody wants to use. When will there be a first wild bug-type Pokemon that will be actually useful? Who knows when? But Vivillon completely sucks. It's another useless Borrow-type bug fly. It's the only bug-type introduced in the game. So this year's may have the many introduced bug-types in the game from earlier generations. It'll probably have a much better one. For example, Gen 5 introduced so many good bug types, whereas a lot of them are usable in these games anyways. The next Pokemon in this generation that is not good, since there's so few Pokemon, there's no really other useless Pokemon. There's in the next generation, which is, the first useless Pokemon is Gumshoos. I actually used Gumshoos for a while, but Vigapul is actually a good early bug-type Pokemon. It has a base stat total of 500. It's also Bug OX because it's a pretty good type. But Gumshoos is basically the same level of usefulness as other early game rodent Pokemon. When would be the good early game rodent? Nobody knows when, but Gumshoos is not really that great. But it's definitely much better than Pokemon that were introduced earlier, such as Castform and Unknown, and Spinda, which two of those are mostly normal types anyways. Standard normal types anyways. The next Pokemon is Wishiwashi Solo Form. Wishiwashi can get into the School Form, which has a massive space stat total of 620, but Solo Form is mean for being the worst Pokemon of all time. The only Pokemon being worse is Snom and, of course, even Snom and Blipbug have a base stat total of 180. But this thing has a base stat total, it has the worst base stat total of Pokemon. But it's not exactly that useless because it can still turn to the School Form. But Solo Form is completely useless, which is showing how it needs to be in a School Form to be useful. Next is Psynotic. Psynotic has a base stat total of 450, 405, and they're definitely much better grass types and fairy types out there in all the generations since previously. Next is Pyukumuku. Pyukumuku has a base stat total of 410. And it's beamed as one of the worst Pokemon that generation. Pyukumuku is also another useless Pokemon that was just introduced. It has very little use, and it's just another water type just to add to your water type collection. While this uses superior starter type anyway. It's a Primarina anyways instead of Pyukumuku. If you want to use a water type as well. Or he's using water type from a previous generation such as Gyarados, or he's the new Araquanid, which is a new water type in that generation as well. Well, and of course used the amazing and used Golisopod as well. Well, which does have a bad ability, but still better than this thing. And even Togedemaru, which is a Pikachu clone, is actually at least useful. So, because it's a steel type, and steel types are weak against fairies. So the next generation is called Gen 8, the worst generation. Even Greedent is actually not that bad. Based at a total of 460, it seems that if I made a rodent, it does get outclassed by normal types later in the game, but it's not that useless as other first gen as rodents from the early in the game. And looking at these base stat totals of most of these Pokemon, besides Berserker, they're not very but then we have one, Penalton, and Warpico. Warpico is another Pikachu clone. It's another useless Pikachu clone. We went from Togedemaru, which is completely a good one, to this, Warpeko. Yeah, not good. And Penalton is probably one of the worst electric types ever introduced, as well. Why does this thing exist? It doesn't even have an evolution. It looks like but it also just looks stupid. And we got one Pokemon in transition that is the Dene. The Dene is another useless Pokemon that was introduced in Gen 6. The Dene has a base stat of 441. I completely forgot this Pokemon existed. It's another useless Pikachu clone, which making the only good Pikachu which makes the only good Pikachu clone Togedemaru and not the Dene. So that's basically about the worst Pokemon of all time. So that's based at total and movesets. These make it the worst Pokemon of all time. And that's basically about this video. And yeah, Pokemon have gradually weeded out bad Pokemon. Most of them not even return in Pokemon Sword and Shield. So yeah, Pokemon Sword and Shield, and now every Pokemon generation still at least introduces a few duds. Each generation, which is usually the Weezero Rodent, the Weezero Bug, and the Weezero Pikachu clone. But other than that, there aren't really many useless Pokemon. Even Pokemon that don't evolve like Carbink are at least good. Base that to a 500, and it could be useful in your playthrough. But most of these Pokemon are not really useful. And the worst generations of this is Generation 2 and 3. Introducing the most modern useless Pokemon per generation. And that's basically about this generation. Goodbye. Video.